Hello, hi, how are you? And welcome to another podcast by George. Well, this is a podcast that I've been waiting to revisit or redo since we first talked to our friend Bob Pace a couple of 3 months ago. And he's on this podcast all the time. Not only do a lot of the guests bring him up and talk about him, but the music that you hear throughout the podcast is from Bob Pace. The bumper music that we call, the music at the open and close, that's Bob Pace music. And we're going to hear some more of Bob's music today. And I wanted to... by way of introduction, just read a little of this bio from his website. I love these things because if I forget to ask something, a lot of it can be covered by the bio. So here we go. Guitarist Bob Pace has entertained Midwest audiences for more than 40 years. He proudly led the Tuesday Night House Band at the legendary Blues on Grand for almost 20 years. He's a member of the Iowa Blues Hall of Fame and the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He also won the Iowa Blues Challenge solo duo competition with Iowa Blues Hall of Fame member Stevie George. Now, we get to hear Bob every Friday at the Gas Lamp Work Release Party. God, what a time that is, and what a great concept that is. I encourage everybody to check that out if you're ever in Des Moines. It's one of the highlights of the entire week and kick off to the weekend at the Gas Lamp beginning at 4:30. Now, it reads on that Bob opened for blues icons Jimmy Vaughn, Johnny Winter, John Mayall, I saw that show, Tab Benoit, is that how they pronounce that? Yeah. Tower of Power, Delbert McClinton, saw Delbert a couple of times. That is he great. Countless others. Now, Bob picked up his first guitar at 10 and was serious by 14. He recalls the defining experience of watching the Beatles and the Screaming Girls on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that created a lot of musicians in this country. Bob says the girls sealed the deal. I had to play guitar after he saw that, and he was jamming with Junior Wells, Eric Sardinas, Coco Montoya. He was with John Mayall when we saw him play with him. Kenny Neal, Willie Big Eyes Smith, who I'm not familiar with. And
he was a drummer for Muddy Waters.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
And Sonny Rhodes, to name but a few. A talented composer, Bob has penned countless tunes and has released Bare Bones and Bob Pace Live at the Blues on Grand featuring originals, the soulful gospel blues, kind of a benchmark, kind of a Rosetta Stone song for Bob. It says his mother influenced him with the gospel and blues from Mahalia Jackson and Billie Holiday, and his dad opened his gate to the country music landscape with Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard. Those are guys that Bob still covers to this day. It came together as he immersed himself in his early guitar heroes, all the Kings. There's three Kings that I think of: Albert, B.B., and who's the other King?
Freddie King.
Freddie King. Okay, there's your three Kings. Roy Buchanan, Mike Bloomfield, Duane Allman, Jimi Hendrix, and Eric Clapton. So that's kind of a long little bio, but it's a great introduction to my friend and a frequent guest, I hope, always on a podcast by George. How are we doing, Bob?
Doing good, my friend. Thanks for having me do this.
Thanks for coming back. And I want to start here by thanking you right off the top. I want to do it at the beginning because if I forget, then I forget. But I want to thank you for, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, that big benefit hockey game that we put on down at Wells Fargo Arena when my sister was dying of ALS. Hosted that game down there, and I didn't even consider it, but Bob came up to me and says, you got to have an anthem. Well, yeah, that's right. It's a big game. We got to have an anthem. And so Bob came down and played the anthem, and I thought he was going to play just a standard rendition of the Stars and Stripes, and no, it was the Jimi Hendrix version, and I'm standing on the line there. I'll never forget it as long as I live, and the guys that I played with won't either. A lot of them have played at pretty, higher levels, elite levels of hockey. They've stood for a lot of anthems, but they've never stood for the Jimi Hendrix version. And I mean, we're standing there on the line listening to this anthem, and with the screeching and the bombs and the missile sounds. Honest to God, that was just a great moment. And again, friend, thanks so much for doing that. He contributed to the cause as well. And, that's just one example of the great guy that Bob Pace is.
You're very welcome.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. Let's do the thumbnail. The bio hits the high points there. But when I think of you starting out as a kid, was it school music that you started with when you were 10, 15 years old? Was it band? How did you get going?
Um, my one of my brothers was into I think it was the Beach Boys and Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. I think it's around that time period. Even, was that before Ed Sullivan? I'm not sure my timeline, but they were fairly close. But that music really got to me. The Beach Boys' harmonies just fascinated me, and I think it was somewhere in that area that I heard them, the Four Seasons, Jan and Dean. So I really liked that '50s kind of stuff. I even liked Johnny Mathis.
Yeah.
Thought his voice was just amazing.
Oh, he was huge. Yeah.
Leslie Gore, Petula Clark, Downtown, the song Downtown.
Remember it well. Yeah.
One that really stirred my heart big time was the theme for To Serve with Love, the Sidney Poitier movie.
Leslie Gore again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Lulu.
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 You're
Yeah,
right.
there you go.
Yeah. And that one just tore me up. I mean, I loved the show anyway. When you're a young kid and you're hormonal and you're thinking about love with a little girl next door or whatever, that song really spoke to your heart. It tore you up a little bit.
Yeah, I saw Lulu about 5 years ago on Jules Holland on cable, on satellite TV out of the BBC. She looks great.
Yeah.
Like Lulu, it doesn't look like she's aged. I mean, she's got to be. I mean, just simple math. She's got to be in her 70s.
Yeah.
And she never smoked cigarettes or drank. It doesn't sound like as man. Can she sing? I mean, she was great on that show.
You're lucky. A lot of musicians can, if they live right, they can play to their normal proficiency level up into their 80s.
Yeah.
Even later.
Yeah.
The great guitar player, classical guitarist Andre Segovia, he was playing up into his 90s.
Yeah.
And like 3 weeks before he died, he was still playing concerts. So it's a matter of living halfway decent. And I'm fortunate I didn't do a whole lot of anything really bad growing up. And if I did, I got done with it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In my early age.
Well, those cigarettes, I mean, they're just, and a lot of musicians on the road in particular, I mean, they're something to occupy your hands and your time, and so they start smoking those cigarettes, and then they get hooked on them, and they can't put them down, and they just ruin your voice, and eventually, and I think of George Harrison. I mean, he in one of his last interviews, he told people, it was the cigarettes. I mean, everybody felt bad about losing a Beatle, nobody felt worse about it than George probably.
I'm sure.
But he said, it was the cigarettes.
Yeah.
Stay away from those damn things. Okay, so let's go back to this early era then again. So you're struck by this music. You start playing. I'm always curious, or I always like to hear the story. When did you know that you had more than a hobby going there?
I knew about maybe, again, my timelines are really bad. But what happened was I saw, after the Beatles thing, I took up the drums because I wanted to be Ringo.
Yeah, sure.
Drummers got all the chicks. If you're listening to Ben Williams Jr., you just got married to a really hot, wonderful woman.
That's true.
And so I went that route for a while, and I was okay at it. But at some point around maybe 15 or so, I think it was, my mom got me a Kmart guitar, which was a piece of real junk, but it had strings and you could play it. And my poor mom and my dad, for the first 3 years I played guitar, I think I knew 3 whole chords, and I played them in every permutation you could think of, but it was still the same 3 damn chords. But you didn't have YouTube or the internet, and you had very little in the way of instruction books. There was the Mel Bay book, which shows this old guy that, he plays a certain dated style, and it doesn't really tell you anything. And somewhere around that time, I think I discovered my mom's blues recordings. They weren't blues per se. They were Billie Holiday and Bessie Smith and Mahalia Jackson, as you mentioned. And from that, I got that blues sound. And then I just kind of went, well, who were they influenced by? And I heard names like B.B. King and the Beale Street Blues Boy, they called him. That was his B.B. moniker. And boy, once I heard B.B. King, it was just like, wow, that's some music I could really get into. And then I heard that Eric Clapton was influenced by B.B., so I had to listen to Eric, and he became a guitar god for many years to me. And from there, it's just a matter of due diligence. Everybody who was influenced by somebody, you study a little bit. And like everybody else, I sat in my room for years and just put on the record player and slowed it down with my thumb to hear all the licks, and they slowed them down an octave usually,
Yeah.
which is really hard to pick up things, but it develops your ear to a high degree.
Compare that to the digital world of today.
Exactly. To this day, I could hear a song, and if I've heard it once before, I could probably, if it's a simple enough tune, I could probably reproduce it on stage in the right key and whatnot. I got a pretty good memory for that sort of thing. I think that's my only gift. I wasn't a prodigy by any means. I just worked my butt off at it because I was so passionate. I still am. I think if you're not passionate about what you do, whether it's music or anything else, get out if you can, if you have another alternative. Musicians, I think, have to do what they do. It's a calling. It's a gift that God gives you, and sometimes you have to work harder than others to do it, but maybe God gives you tenacity, bullheadedness, I don't know. But I just kept at it until I got better at it.
But you're playing guitar now. You're not drumming, or you're doing both, or?
I could play, I like to joke, I could play about 16 instruments really poorly and about 3 fairly well.
Yeah.
If it has strings on it, I can ring out a tune on anything pretty much, and I could play bass enough to be a bass player for a few minutes. I think, and this is a good answer maybe to your question you just asked. I think if you're a drummer because you've played drums for a long time and you've paid your dues on drums. You've played at the crappiest clubs. You've gotten no pay or cheated out of money. You've been almost in car wrecks on the road going to a drum gig. I think that's what makes a drummer just as much as studying the drums, rudiments, and whatnot. So I don't call myself a drummer. I call myself somebody who can play some drums. But I wouldn't want to disrespect any drummer out there who makes it their life to dedicate their life to the drums. Just like I could play a little piano, but I'm not a piano player. What am I? I'm a musician, and I can play guitar, and I can play enough on some instruments to record my own things, make my own demos or whatnot. And but I'm primarily a guitar player. I've gotten very serious about the harmonica lately for certain reasons, and I'm quite passionate about it now. And it's a fascinating study, and it's just as hard as learning guitar was for me.
Yeah.
But I do have the gift of stubbornness or tenacity, and plus I'm blessed now. After all these years of training, I got good ears, so I could pick up things a lot easier than I could when I was a kid. And so the march goes on, the beat goes on.
Yeah. Well, take us back a little bit, and it's not easy, and I can attest to this also because we're talking about the 70s here. And if anybody that went through the 70s, it's hard to remember the 70s. It was a long time ago, number one.
I'm told
number
I had a
two,
great
there was
time.
a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. A lot of drugs and alcohol, a lot of foggy memories.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that.
Well, take us back. Tell us about making that transition then from learning to actually being out on the road, being a pro, playing in bands and the bars in the 70s.
Honest to God, I don't remember much.
I know. I know what you're talking about.
All I remember is being in a van with about 7 or 8 sweaty guys, traveling around the United States and never staying in town more than 1 or 2 nights anywhere. I've probably hit 40 states, but I probably didn't see a thing while I was out there because we were always on the road playing, getting in the van and heading from one end of the country to the other, back and forth. I'm sure we went through Dakotas. I'd never seen the Mount Rushmore because it was dark.
Yeah.
I probably went around the area of the Grand Canyon, of course, and never got to see it because we never stopped.
Yeah.
So I was just a drummer on the road for a while and in a rock band, which is a pretty fun life.
But again, on the drums.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me about that life, because you hear the super groups and the music from that, and all the chicks and throwing TVs through the motel, sliding doors and all the crazy stuff that they do. But that life that you were leading,
yeah,
are there women involved in that at that level, or is it mostly just guys going from leading a lonely life, going from town to town?
If you're especially the 70s when musicians were a little bit more revered because a lot of them couldn't play to the level they do now, I guess. Or it's easier for them now than it was back then. If you could really play well on any instrument, women would come out to check that out.
Yeah.
And because you're the focus on stage, you and 4 or 5 other people on stage, you're going to get some attention. It's just the law of averages.
Yeah.
Right. And I always said, I make this as a joke, but drummers always got all the chicks. That's okay.
If you're the drummer, it's all right. Yeah, and you're mostly behind a drum kit, or but you play them all, right? I mean,
I'm sorry.
you play all the instruments at this point, or not?
Oh, probably at that time I was just guitar and drums.
Okay.
The funny thing was, I always I got fired from 3 different shows, 3 different bands, because they found out I played guitar and I was better than their guitar players were. And I was the drummer in the band. They got jealous, and I got booted.
Yeah.
Right, and when you play guitar, you're in your hotel room at night, you're playing, and the guy walks in and goes, "Geez, you're really good. Yeah, you're fired." Okay. And that happened.
Yeah.
A couple times.
And those bands, I know our paths crossed. I was watching you were playing, but a couple of bands that I recall that I'm familiar with, that some of the listeners may know or may have seen in Iowa or in the Midwest, really, Pelican Peace Band and Sky Dancer, or Dancer as it's called.
I was the bass player for those 2 bands for a while. I was an interim bass player for Pelican Peace Band. Never played guitar with them. I played a little bit of guitar, but mostly bass with Sky Dancer, then Dancer, I think it was, or Dancer, then Sky Dancer.
Now that band in particular, it was a regional band. It came close, right? I mean, they almost broke.
They came close. They tried. They went to Detroit. I think they made a live album, and that was it. That was their swan song. They tried, but there were so many bands back there, and unless you had something really, really special, and these guys were all very talented musicians, but they didn't have that one little thing that brought them over the top. And I think they just ran out of money and patience and time.
And that one thing mostly is luck, but it can also be a gimmick or something. And, of course, I think of Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
I mean, ridicule him if you will, but the guy made it work, and he got out that way.
Absolutely.
So, okay, speaking of gimmicks, let's try something that you'll only get on a podcast by George. It's the Wayback Machine. We're going to jump in, turn a couple of knobs, flip a couple of switches, and we're going to go back to 1977. And this is the band Sky Dancer from their live album. Check this out.
I've seen the sun rising upon the newborn land. I feel a new emotion each time I touch your hand. Oh, walk upon the water and you will feel no pain. In a land where love lies lost, waiting now to be regained.
I don't know, out of those bands, would you say that those are a couple of names of the bands that were the best, that were the most successful, that came the closest, or not?
For people I was with, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pelican Peace Band was very well known regionally. They played every high school
Yeah, they were
thing.
great.
They were a great band. Dickie Dykeman, the guitar player, was a great guitar player, a great singer. Dan Nisley, who lives in town, was the drummer for that band. And his son just graduated a few years ago from Juilliard as a percussion major.
I remember that guy.
Yeah.
He always wore cutoffs, and
Yeah.
I think he didn't wear a shirt most of the time. A lot of drummers didn't do that.
He
They
was
had a
all
song
buffed
called-
out like crazy. He
Yeah.
looked like
Yeah.
Fabio.
Yeah, right. And they had a song called "Fried Cabbage." That's the only thing I remember. "Fried Cabbage," it was because it's
Probably
a bizarre
that, yeah.
name. I don't.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you a lyric in it, but
Yeah.
they were great. So they were what you might call a regional band. They were almost a Midwest band as opposed to
Yeah.
a local band or a state band. They
Exactly
really
that.
did the road, right?
They did.
Yeah.
They did. I was mostly with them in Des Moines, a few outgoing towns here and there. But I think I was with the band, I'm going to guess maybe a year, maybe a little longer. And the irony is I got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with them as the bass player for Dancer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's how I got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here. It's as a bass player, which, as Tom Murphy and a few of my bass player friends know, I'm not a real good bass player. I was okay back then because I could hammer it out and do stage moves and look
Yeah.
like Gene Simmons a little bit. So
That's interesting.
I got in.
You know, people need to know this because there's an inbuilt bias, almost a discrimination against bass players, and I'm guilty of it too. I know that you're an extraordinary, talented, just a very accomplished lead guitar player. And so guys like me think, well, if you can play like you can on the lead guitar, you can play bass in your sleep. Not necessarily.
No, it takes a different mindset.
Yeah.
If you play bass like you play lead guitar, you won't work very much.
Yeah.
Because you're in the way of the lead guitar or the guitar player. And you got to play on the bass strings. My son Nicholas is a bass player. He plays with me in the Bob Pace band, Bob Pace Blues Band, Butter Cow, whatever. And he doesn't play any note that is not absolutely necessary. He won't do a solo if you paid him $100.
Yeah.
You know, but his philosophy is, I'm just going to lay that groove down, make it fat and in the pocket. And if you want flash, look over to your right for the lead guitar or the keyboard on the other side or harmonica or whatever it is. It ain't going to be me.
Right.
And because of that, I mean, he works. You know, and those are the people I tend to hire.
Yeah.
Tom Murphy can do that as well as anybody alive, but Tom also can turn that switch.
Yeah.
And just go into super, oh my God, I can't believe that's coming off of a bass mode.
Yeah.
And he's phenomenal.
The key is he can do that. Yeah.
And most of the time, and I'm ribbing him now, in case he ever listens to this, most of the time he does that. Sometimes he likes to, him and I like to challenge each other. Tom likes to go and be like, okay, come on, old man, let's see what you got.
Yeah.
And we have a fun little interludes on stage, interactions on stage, almost a little battles, but they're all in good fun. But he can throw down with anybody.
Let's move the timeline along a little bit here, because what you're describing to me, these bands that we watched in the 70s, the bands that you played in the 70s, as you mentioned, even the really good ones that almost, it all falls apart eventually.
Yeah.
And members oftentimes, well, if they're too drunk and addicted, they might die. But if they don't die, they'll go on and work in private business and maybe work for an insurance company, maybe drive a truck, maybe work who knows what they're going to do.
I've seen a lot of my friends go both ways.
Yeah.
That way, yeah.
And so what did you do?
Well, I like to say it this way. I don't think I was particularly that smart. I finished high school barely because I was playing in bands at that time and trying to learn how to play guitar and drums. So I didn't really pay attention to academics much. I wish I had now. And I didn't go to college, so I was on the road, the College of Hard Knocks, I guess you'd say, or the College of Music. And I just was tenacious. I keep using that word, I guess, because I didn't really know how to do anything else well. If it's musically, if it has to do with music of any kind, I could probably pull it off. If it's anything else, I probably would panic. This is just what I know how to do. I can't draw. I can't hammer wood. I can barely operate a toaster on a good day, kind of like Ozzy. And I just, this is what I do. My girlfriend likes to call me a savant. We won't put the idiot part on the beginning of that. But truly, if it's musical, I can usually handle it. And I've always told her that, give me a musical task, give me 3 of them at the same time, I'll juggle them, and I'll do them professionally and do them well. But if you ask me to go to the store and get 3 different objects, 3 different things, I probably won't get them right.
Yeah. Well, so you stayed in music. These other bands fell apart, collapsed, don't exist. They're just in the dustbin of history.
Yeah.
But so then was this the beginning of, the Bob Pace sound, the Bob Pace band? Did you go solo at that point, or what'd you do?
I didn't do solo stuff for many, many years, probably not until like 2000 or so, or 2002 maybe. I started doing a few things like that, always bands. And because I needed to make a living doing this, support the family, I just had to work at anything I could get. For a long time in Des Moines, the thing that paid the best was country music. Good old Merle Haggard, Waylon and Willie music. I remember the first time after I was done with one of my rock bands, and we were getting paid literally like $8, $9 a night a piece. Not enough to do anything with. We were eating crackers and ketchup with water, and we called it Nashville soup. Delicious. Or bologna sandwiches when we can afford it. There's a reason why rock guys are skinny, because they don't eat.
Right.
Right? Back in the day, anyway. The first time I got hired to do a country gig, they paid me $100, right? And I handed it to everybody else. I said, well, here's your 20, here's your 20, here's your, what are you doing? So that's yours. And my brain couldn't fathom that.
Yeah.
That I could make $100 playing 2 hours of country music in a night. And I did. And I went, is this a normal thing? He says, yeah. He says, sometimes we make more than this. I just about died and went to heaven.
Yeah.
So I learned how to play country. I went through my dad's records and kind of revisited some of those things and learned how to play. And I developed a real love for good country music. I was fortunate to play with a few people in Nashville when I was down there and a few people on the road. I won't have to name drop anything. But I learned how to play it fairly decently, and I was one of the go-to guys for a lot of years in town that played some of the east side rougher bars and whatnot. I mean, I came up pretty rough. Some of those places on the east side were pretty...
Yeah, I spent some time in Leetown.
Yeah.
And the Plantation.
Yeah.
Those places. I mean, and again, those were country
I was
places.
in the Plantation for 7 years, 7 nights a week for about 7
Yeah.
years.
Older crowd. A lot of alcohol, but also they had money, so I could see why that would pay you a little bit more.
Yeah.
A guy that I was working with in radio, John France, who hosted Country Music USA.
Right.
Used to perform out there. He'd go out there and sing Thunder Road.
Yeah.
I think, you know.
Robert Mitchum song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that took, you were there 6 or 7 years doing those.
Yeah, I think I took a break for about a year when they did some renovation or closed down, and we came back and did another 3 years.
What happened to it?
The Plantation?
Yeah.
I think it just went belly up because of, I hate to say mismanagement, but probably some business situation just didn't work out. I can't remember the owner's name. So I want to say Bob Henry, but I don't really remember. It's been a long time
And
ago.
there was a radio guy named Bob Henry. I just know whenever I was out there, you wanted to watch yourself.
You really
Pay
did.
attention, because you could get taken down out there very easily.
I always made friends with the bouncers.
Yeah.
Every time I made sure I knew their favorite drink. I made sure I acknowledged them 2 or 3 times a night, and I never had to swing a fist in the whole time I was out there, because they're your buddies or your pal. If you take care of them, they'll take care of you.
Yeah. So did you write country songs? Are you writing at this point or just covering, performing?
At that point,
Yeah.
I don't think I was writing much at the time, nothing good. And there was no opportunities to really do anything with it if I did. You couldn't afford to make an actual album back in those days. That was very expensive. The best you could do was put something on a cassette and sell it at a show maybe, but cassettes, the quality was pretty dismal.
Yeah.
I don't recall doing much of that. That was just my learning period and probably my drinking period.
Well, yeah.
My carousing period, I don't remember a lot.
Yeah, people just don't realize.
Yeah.
The landscape was awash in alcohol, and
it was a wild time back then. It was like
and those
the
country
Wild
bars,
West.
it's mostly drinking. It's not a lot of drugs and marijuana and stuff like that. It's mostly just hardcore drinkers. A lot of
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I got to ask this question because a lot of people are going to listen to this and want to know some folks have dug up a little video or some photos or something. You and Hee Haw, what's the story behind that?
Jeez. The truth of the matter is I don't talk about it a lot because it's hard to explain. What happened was I went down with some friends. I was playing here at I believe it was a Nashville club on the south side. I was playing with a band, and they were from Nashville. And I went down with them for a couple of weeks vacation. I believe it was after my first divorce. Don't quote me, though. And we went and I'm not even sure where it was at now, but we went and saw them tape Hee Haw. Gosh, I can't remember where it was. It wasn't the Ryman, but it was some building down there. But anyway, we're on the stage set, and Buck Owens is doing his segments. And back in the day, Hee Haw, they did their segments. They did like Corn Patch County, or when they popped up out of the corn patches and did jokes.
Right.
They would do like a whole season of those at one day.
Right.
Or if they did Buck performing his songs, they'd do 5 or 6 a day for 2 or 3 days.
You could even kind of tell it was done that way. It was not very well done. And that wasn't the point. Yeah.
It was sloppily edited back in Burbank or somewhere. But they would do that. Well, I went down there on a day when their guitar player didn't show up for the taping. And being Nashville, where everybody picks guitar, from babyhood on up, Buck asked, "Is anybody out there to play guitar?"
You're kidding me.
No. And
they're recording a television show.
Yeah. Well, not live at the moment.
No, yeah.
Yeah. But and my buddies put my hand up in the air, and 3 other guys' hands went up, and he went, do you play guitar? Yeah. Okay, you don't have to play, you just have to fake it. Can you fake it? Oh, yeah, sure, right? And back then, I'd been playing for about 5 years, and I didn't know much. I could play enough to play my chords, and that's about it. But he got me up there. They put me in a kind of a cotton gingham-looking tablecloth shirt. I had long hair that made me put it up in a ponytail with a hat on top of it. And if you look closely, and this is funny because it's really hard to find me on Hee Haw. There's 3 episodes I was on. But if you're not looking really close or know what I look like back in the day, and I was a baby face, you won't find me too easily.
Because you don't even look like yourself to yourself.
No, I had to recognize myself. It took a while. But I look like I'm short-haired, no mustache, no beard, no anything. I'm skinny as a rail, and I look like I'm scared to death up there, which I am. And they had huge Bose or Magnaplaner speakers on both sides of a stage, and they would pipe in the music, and then the TV cameras would record that while Buck and the band are mimicking and faking the instruments and the singing.
So that music's coming through the speakers into the cameras, and that's the sound that you're hearing?
Well, the cameras are picking up the whole stage area in front of them, and with that is the speakers.
Yeah.
It was pretty primitive, but it worked.
Right.
And because there was so much volume coming out of those speakers, it sounded pretty live. It thumped your chest pretty good. Yeah. But these guys were top-notch musicians in his band, because for a drummer to be able to do that in time to the music that he's played in the studio is a real art. Not so hard maybe with a steel guy trying to fake rolling the bar and doing his thing, or the guitar player. Well, I was just playing the rhythm guitar parts, and I watched what he was doing. If he played a G chord, I'd play a G chord, and so on and so on. And got through it pretty well, and he was happy with it. And I think he wanted to teach his lead guitar studio guy a little lesson. He says, why don't you come back tomorrow? Let's do this again, but you got to get a haircut. Okay, and my hair was about down to my knees. I mean, I was a long-haired, thick Timothy Schmidt from Poco and the Eagles. I was that guy.
Were you playing rock bands at that time, or what?
I was in a country band, hardcore country band back
with
in
hair
Des Moines.
like that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. I had my share of incidences.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But it wasn't. If you played well and you were sincere about playing music, they'd be okay with it for the most part if they knew you. Somebody came off the road, they might say long-haired hippie freak or something, but it rolled off of you pretty much.
Because there were guys that hated that shit back then.
There was.
I mean,
it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I never ran into too many problems with that. But anyway, I was down there and I did that. But I can never say I physically ever played on the show, because I never played a single note. I mimicked for 3 shows, for 3 or 4 songs, the chords in the background to what they were doing. If you look really close, if you find the clips, you'll see the instruments are not plugged in. Yeah. And it sounds loud as hell because I'm strumming a Telecaster. And
are you playing behind Buck Owens or who?
Yeah.
So look for Buck Owens, and you might see you back there in those segments, huh?
Yeah, it's hard to find. One or two people over the years have found me on there and said they found me.
Yeah.
Like it was the Holy Grail or something. It's ridiculous.
I could check it out. God, it's hard to watch. I mean,
it
was corny on purpose. That was kind of an inside joke or whatever. But my God, we're talking about corny for country music in the 70s or whatever. And today, it's hard to watch.
It did bring a lot of people to country music, though. I got to give them that.
Yeah.
And they had some great acts on.
Yeah.
I got to see Johnny Cash up close. I got to basically walk by him. I almost said hi to him, but I just was too tongue-tied.
Yeah, sure.
And I met a lot of the people on the staff. They were beautiful people. I got an autographed picture with them. I got a few pictures of my scrapbook of me with Buck Owens.
Nice.
I keep them there because I don't like to explain that all the time to people. Oh, I heard you played on Hee Haw. Yeah, sort of. So I've always kind of downplayed that, not because I'm not proud of the fact I was on the show, because I really didn't do anything. The biggest thing I did on there was Roy Clark gave me a little 5-minute guitar lesson on how to play double picking with the flat pick, because I was playing Chet Atkins style with a thumb pick.
Yeah.
And that's not a guaranteed way of playing very, very quickly on the guitar, because going in one motion, you don't get you get half as many notes.
And Roy Clark could play quick.
He played like a greased pig. Yeah. And he was backstage and he said, let me see your thumb pick. And he took it, he threw it over his shoulder. And he gave me one of his picks. He says, now I want you to watch this, because I'm going to do this a couple times for you. And he showed me how to go up and down on the strings which again, without internet, without instruction when you're a kid, you don't. There's no books that really teach you the right way to do that sort of thing. Seeing somebody up close do that is like YouTube valuable now. And he showed me how to do the up and down strokes. Says, now do that until you can do this. And then he went, just machine gun of notes. It was so fast, I thought time had stopped.
Yeah.
And I went home and I practiced that until I got pretty good at it.
Great guitar.
And that was the foundation of whatever I got for guitar technique and speed. It was a little 5-minute lesson from Roy Clark.
That's great. This is fascinating. I love talking. I like talking history, but let's fast forward a little bit again. Tell us about gospel blues.
Gospel blues, I wrote that when what is now Lefty's Live Music was called Baggs Lounge, or Baggs. And David Bagby owned it, and it was the blues club in town. It was kind of like what Blues on Grand became. I think it was before Blues on Grand. And I was playing with a couple of really heavy guys, and I was going through, I think, my first divorce. I keep bringing that up because of the timeline. But when you're doing that, you're drinking, you're being self-destructive. And they had a cot in the back for anybody who really couldn't drive. And I was that guy some nights. And I remember one night they just put me in the back and closed the door. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and the song, literally, honest to God, just came to me. Every word of it, the chords to the guitar, everything. And I had a little lamp there, and I had no paper. I saw a little piece of a stub of a pencil and a McDonald's wrapper. And I wrote the entire song out in about 15 minutes. And then I passed out. And the next day, I saw what I wrote, and all the melody was still in my head. I put it on guitar. I don't think I've changed it, except for when my parents passed away. I added a verse to the song. This was like 5 years ago. But until then, I had never changed a word of that song or the chords to the song. I played the same way to this day.
Wow, it's a
and
lightning
it seems
strike.
to resonate with people.
Oh, it's a great song. Because it's a great. You can play this song in church when you've got the fervor of religion in you.
Yeah.
You can play it when you're in a bar drunk.
Yeah.
You can play. I mean, it means something to every. It's a great song. I want to play a little bit of it here on the podcast. So let's check this out. This is Gospel Blues by Bob Pace.
You left me, baby. I don't know what to do. And here I am thinking, Lord, I'm just thinking about you. My guitar is crying. My songs is too. Here I am singing old gospel blues. Well, I was a young boy, went to church all the time. To my Savior, sweet Jesus of mine. The Bible says, do unto like you want people to do for you. That's all I pray for. Oh, gospel blues. Just live like you want to. Do the best that you can. Sisters and brothers, yeah. Every woman, child, and man. And love one another. Everything that you do. And that's what I pray for. In an old gospel blues.
I love that song. I know that's a great song. You know that's a great song. What do others say about it?
I've had a lot of beautiful comments from people over the years that the song has touched them. I've played it at funerals. I've played it at my mom's funeral, actually, about a year and a half ago. It just resonates with people. Once in a while, you just hit one out of the park if you're lucky. And that was one for me.
Yeah.
It touches me. I never get tired really of playing the song because it always feels different every time I play it. And, I've always wished somebody like an Eric Clapton or a Carlos Santana would cover it because of their skills on it would be so amazing, their interpretations of it.
Yeah.
Or Warren Haynes from Government Mule is another person I love as well.
That's just a great song. Now we're talking, is this is a drinking time? Are we talking 80s here, 90s? When was this?
Probably around 85.
85, yeah.
Yeah.
So still playing the bars.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're not playing country at this point. You're not in a country band.
Not
let's
at
say.
that point. No, I was playing mostly blues.
Doing mostly blues. All right, and so and I look at this catalog of music, and I've got the Blues on Grand CD, and I've listened to these are great songs. The other song, maybe from that era, or maybe we're moving ahead here a little bit, Brother Brother, or just Brother. I'm not sure what the name of it is.
I call it both.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean that's a tribute to the Allman Brothers, and man, that's a cool song.
Yeah. I can't even tell you what year I wrote that, but it was probably around a couple years before that album came out, before the Blues on Grand CD. So I'm thinking right around 2000 or so.
Okay.
That seems to have been a prolific period for me to write.
So what inspired you there? Greg was still alive. Dwayne had been gone for quite a
Yeah,
while.
Dwayne was a huge hero
Yeah.
to me. I mean, I was never a great slide player. That's James Bean's territory. He's hands down the
We've
best
had him on a
slide player.
podcast by George, and yeah, he talked about the slide.
He's just an amazing slide player, and you can't touch him for what he does. Matt is really good. Matt Woods is a great slide player.
He's been on,
But they're different slide stylists.
Yeah.
So I play a little bit and I hack around at it, but I'll never be what those guys are. But I was a huge admirer of Dwayne Allman's slide work and his lead work on Aretha Franklin's tunes, the Muscle Shoals stuff he did. His tone, his taste, his emotion just really grabbed me. He was one of my true guitar heroes. And when he died, I mean, it was like, oh, man, because he was a hero.
Yeah.
So those words just kind of percolated in the back of my head for a few years, and they came out. Couldn't even tell you quite what year, but probably around 98 to 2000, somewhere in that area.
It's a great song, and again, I think, my God, why can't this be I think these songs ought to be nationally known, because again, you've got a huge following and allegiance to the Allman Brothers. Well, here's a flash. You ain't going to hear any more Allman Brothers music. The Allmans are gone.
Yeah.
But you can hear this tribute to these guys, and come on out to the gas lamp, and you'll hear it out there too. That song, Brother, or Brother, Brother, is just extraordinary. Really, really enjoy it. Really like that song.
Just a child whistling Dixie on dog day nights and stormy Monday afternoon. You know we left this world way too early. Brother, you left us way too soon. Brother, brother, lay on through. Every note you play, gone with the wind.
on a hot Atlanta night. Lord, I just got those old Statesboro blues. And little Martha's on the back porch for anyone to hear. But it ain't my cross to bear. It's what I choose. Brother, brother, lay on through the night. Every note she plays, gone with the wind. Brother, brother, lay on through the night. Brother, the southern sun's gonna rise again.
So now you're back in blues mode. Blues on Grand. That's your home away from home. You're in residency down there for a long time.
Yeah, every Tuesday night for probably 18 years.
Wow.
Under like 2 to 3 different bar owners there.
Yeah.
The last, of course, which was Jeff Wagner.
Yeah.
And I owe Jeff a huge debt of gratitude to this day because you didn't make a lot of money down there. As Matt Woods liked to say, he made literally dozens of dollars doing that show. But what they did do, they did pay you fairly, in all honesty. And I didn't draw very well back then because you're still learning your craft. And as a guitar player, we're known for playing self-indulgent solos for 10, 20 minutes at a shot. You don't know how to put the show together yet or how to entertain people. You're just learning how to play guitar in front of people. And Jeff knew all that, knew I had to grow, and he gave me the time to do that. And he also let me open for just about everybody who came into town. I mean, some very famous
Right, because he
people.
booked those acts?
Yeah.
I saw you open for John Mayall.
Yeah.
I saw you open for Johnny Lang.
Yeah, now those weren't him.
No?
Those were from the Valair, I believe.
Okay.
I can't tell you right this second who, I want to say Steve White was the guy, or Steve White or Steve Whiting hired me for those, but I'm not positive. Memory's fading. But we had people like Tab Benoit come in, Eric Zardinas.
Oh, the talent that came through there. Just
Pat Boyack and the Prowers, Lee McBee.
You know who I really liked? Nobody talks about him. Carl Weathersby. Remember him? Out of Chicago.
Him.
He came through there and played.
Yeah.
He was really great. He's kind of a buddy guy, protege.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys that like to take the guitar and walk out in the street and go around the building and all that stuff. Buddy guy started that with an 80-foot-long guitar cord back in the day,
Now
and
we still do that, except we do it now with wireless transfer.
Yeah, a lot easier.
So it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
There was a guy named Guitar Shorty that came in a few times to the Grand, and he was known for like doing literally splits and handstands and somersaults while playing the guitar.
Can
he
you
was
imagine?
well into his 50s by then.
Yeah.
And he could still do it.
I've heard of Guitar Shorty.
I think he's still alive. I'm not sure. But up to at least a few years ago, he was that guy. He was just, and it's from people like that and Buddy Guy that I learned finally how to entertain a little bit. It's not just about being up there and being self-important and saying, dig what I'm doing. This is so great. It's about how can I make people smile? How can I reach them? How can I get on a level to where they feel what I'm feeling or something even better? And I like that a lot more than trying to be just a guitar player who just wants to play for his own enjoyment, I guess.
Yeah.
I get my enjoyment from playing for other people. I don't sit around the house much and just play for fun. I write songs. I practice to stay facile on the guitar or whatever I'm playing. But when I go out and play live, that's the reward for me. Always has been.
Well, it's a reward for us, too. God, do we enjoy it. And you're very modest. I mean, the guy's in the Iowa Blues Hall of Fame as a bass player? No, that's in the Rock Hall of Fame.
Rock Hall of Fame bass player, yeah.
That's amazing. And all of these great names and all the stages that you've shared. And okay, so let's wrap it up here. And I don't want to get, a little droopy George or morbid or anything like that, but we're kind of getting to that age. We're getting up there a little bit. What's going to be your legacy? How do you think you'll be remembered? How do you want to be thought of as a musician, as a player in this world that you've lived in for 60-some years?
Just a nice guy who did the best he could to pay it forward and played with some soul and heart and soul.
Yeah.
That's enough for me.
That's great.
My kids are proud of me. That's a plus.
Yeah.
I think they respect me for what I do.
Well, I've seen both of them play with you. Of course, Nick plays with you all the time on bass.
Yeah.
You got another son that plays lead guitar, doesn't he? He comes
Tony.
out once in a great while, yeah.
Yeah, and he's an old soul. He can play.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, whenever we get back together, we put the Pace band back together. We played around town in Iowa for most of their high school years, and
What a
played
great thing.
and had a ball.
Yeah.
Just me and the kids in a van on the weekends playing. It was phenomenally
Yeah.
fun.
That's fantastic.
Those are great memories.
Yeah, I don't get to play hockey with my family members very much, but yeah, that's something that I'm envious. That sounds great. Well, again, we'll come back. We'll we'll do another one of these podcasts. We'll get caught up again here in a little while. I want to encourage everybody to come out, check out Bob Pace if you ever see him anywhere around town, anywhere around the great state of Iowa, and of course on these podcasts. Check them out. You can always find us at the web home, www.podcastbygeorge.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Spotify. We're on the iHeartRadio app. There's no shortage of places to find us. Just do it. And check out the Bob Pace Band every Friday at 4:30 at the Gas Lamp. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to another podcast by George.
I got me a situation, tell you what it is. I got me a situation, tell you what it is. You might call it some kind of addiction, it ain't nothing that I want to fix. I can't seem to get a handle on the women in my life. I can't seem to get a handle on the women in my life. No other kind can hold a candle, no other kind can burn as bright. Good looking older women are gonna be the death of me. Good looking older women are gonna be the death of me. They can put a smile on my face, honey, that can light up the city street. I got a fever, I just can't help it. I don't know how to cool it down. I got a fever, I just can't help it, and I don't know how to cool it down. Well, it burned me first time I felt it. It still does when they're around. Good looking older women are gonna be the death of me. Good looking older women are gonna be the death of me. They can put a smile on my face, honey, that can light up the city street.